Welcome back to Just Ask Mrs. Hurlbut. This is episode 12. Our topic today, fighting fair. Before we even begin, let's make sure we understand the difference between fighting, arguing, and disagreeing, because there are three very different dynamics to this idea of fighting fair. I have a funny feeling that they might come up in a question, so I'm going to, do I need to introduce her? She's back.
Hi.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Mom.
Thanks for being here.
Always.
Let's get started with question number 1 about fighting fair.
Okay, let's start non-romantic first.
Okay.
How do I fix a friendship when we aren't speaking to each other?
Oh, gosh. I guess it depends on why you're not speaking to each other. Can we presume that this is a relationship that was just fine, but they had some sort of disagreement?
Let's presume that a fight happened.
So there's a disagreement or an argument or a fight that wasn't resolved, and now they're giving each other the silent treatment. So the question again is, how do I fix it?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
when we aren't speaking.
So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you able to pinpoint exactly why you're not speaking to each other? And then ask yourself, is this something worth fixing? Is this a friendship worth fighting for? Is this somebody who, underneath whatever this argument, whatever this dispute was, underneath it all is just a solid friend? Or is this a pattern in behavior, and do they regularly do stuff that upsets you or ghost you when they just don't want to deal with you anymore? So there's a lot of factors here. So let's start with, well, Lucy, you tell me, what do you think, which scenario would be like a typical scenario? Is it a good friendship that is worth fighting for? And is the reason for them not talking valid?
I've been in both, but I would say if there's strong emotion involved in a fight, it usually is a friendship worth fighting for, because you wouldn't care that much if it wasn't.
Okay.
So that's my immediate thought. But it's a matter of, I've had friends that I want to work it out with, but it isn't worth it at the end of the day. So it's a matter of, is it a core value issue? Is it a core moral issue? Or is it just they're being annoying? Like, it's
right. So you really have to ask yourself all these questions first. You've got to self-reflect and say, wow, we're not speaking. Do I want this to continue? Is it worth fighting for? Can it be fixed? And then when you made your decision, you got to communicate that. One of you has to be the bigger person. It may as well be you, because you're the one asking, to text them very briefly and say, could we talk? Do not send them an essay. Can we talk? Mm-hmm. And by can we talk, can we have a phone conversation, or can we meet? Maybe you say that. Can we meet? Hopefully you get a yes. How much time has gone by? Again, that's you. I've dealt with students who it's only been a couple days, and I've dealt with other students where it's been 6 months. Mm-hmm. And they still see each other every day because they're in class together and they have the same friends. So can we talk? It cannot be over text. It must be either face-to-face or voice-to-voice. And then if you are fortunate enough to get that far and now you're meeting, you have to leave your defensiveness at the door. You have to leave your righteousness at the door. You need to go in and say, can we move forward? Can we put this behind us and move forward? Can we, ready for it, agree to disagree? Or can we make amends? I always say that moving backwards usually isn't going to help with the resolution. Yes, having been through it, you experience growth.
By moving backwards, do you mean going over what happened?
Rehashing it, yeah. Rehashing doesn't usually help. The key is moving forward. How do we get to a place of peace and forgiveness? And that's really important, because sometimes we aren't both ready both people aren't ready to apologize, or maybe they haven't even recognized what they've done is wrong. So it's really tricky because you're looking for peace and forgiveness, and you might have to forgive without someone actually asking to be forgiven. If the friendship is worth it to you, you should move forward. And the only way to move forward is to make peace with what has happened instead of trying to either fix it or solve it. The problem is, if it happens again, I always tell people that idea of guarding your heart. If it happens, what is the old saying, shame on you and then shame on me if you allow it to happen again? If it's a pattern in behavior, that's when you need to really start thinking about questioning the friendship.
Or your expectations.
Or your expectations, yeah. So if you move forward and it happens again and happens again, you either A, have to accept this as a reality of this person, or B, step away and say, I'm grateful for this friendship, but it's time to move on. So yes, it can be fixed, but first recognize your part in all this. How am I involved in this? How do I feel about this? Am I willing to fight for this? Is it worth fighting for? How big of an issue was this? We talked about this in a couple episodes ago about, what are the battles worth fighting for and what are the deal breakers? So you have to recognize that as the person on the receiving end, or the person who's desiring to make amends. If you want to make amends, you can't change this person. You can call out behaviors, but you can't change the person. So again, how can we push forward? Can we push forward? If we can, then we're going to fight for this friendship.
I think that some of the things that have saved friendships that I've wanted to fight for is, okay, I want this person in my life, but they clearly can't show up the way that either they need me or I need them. So maybe let's set a different expectation, and that way they can still be in your life, but you might be taking out the arguments or the disappointment or the miscommunications. Yeah. And then you can still enjoy them in the ways that they do, but just have the proper expectations.
Right.
So those
that's guarding your
happen.
heart.
Yeah.
That's guarding your heart, so you're not setting yourself up for that same drama or issue that happened before. Great.
Okay. Family. I argue with my parents about everything. How do I stop the cycle?
How do you stop the cycle of arguing with your parents? Well, the parent-child dynamic is very unique. If you haven't already listen to episode 10, because it talks a lot about that dynamic. But it's a unique dynamic in that it's a lifelong relationship that's developed over years and habits have formed. It also goes without saying that kids in general behave much better for other people than they do for their own parents. And your parents tend to see the worst of you, and you tend to show them the worst of you. And that sometimes works both ways, where parents, they will do and say things to their children that they would never say to anybody. Usually it's because that relationship is so solid that they're not going to break up with you. They can't break up with you. They can't ghost you. They shouldn't anyway. So how do you repair that damage? I'm going to say the same thing I did with the last question. You have to look inward and ask yourself, what is it that you might be doing that upsets them over and over and over again? Because arguing, disagreeing, fighting is a two-way street. So a lot of it is your level of maturity. We tend to treat our parents when we're 15 the same way we did when we were 5. And sometimes you're 25 and you find yourself still doing this, those bad habits rear their ugly head because it's all you've ever known. So it's time to maybe grow up a little bit and ask yourself, what is my tolerance level with them? And what can I try as a sign of maturity from my end? Maybe before I leave my room, I'll make my bed and put my clothes away so that they don't ask me and then I forget and then and then we end up yelling at each other. So maybe, just maybe, you beat them to the punch. What are the reasons that your parents are usually angry at you for or about? Then say to yourself, well, what could I do to prevent that in the first place? What if I make the effort to empty the dishwasher and, take out the trash before I say, hey, can I go out with my friends? Because what are they going to ask? Did you empty the dishwasher and take out the trash? No. And then that turns into an argument. So what can you do? What's within your control to prevent it in the first place? There's one. Two is when they do come down hard on you and trigger you in some way that typically turns into an argument, can you exercise patience? Can you exercise self-control? Can you show signs of maturity of saying, sure, I'll do that. Even if I don't agree, even if I don't like it, sure, I'll do that. Or sure, I won't do that. So maybe think twice about the way you respond to their demands, to their requests, to their attitude, because you feed off of each other. And if you come to them with a more mature response, or maybe you start the conversation, you're going to get that back. So if they're not doing it, or maybe they're doing it and you don't recognize it, you got to do it. That's on you. You're old enough now. If you're listening to this, you're more than likely pushing 20 or more. And whether or not you live at home, you come to blows with your parents, figure out what you can do that is in your control to avoid it. And then if it's building, figure out what you can do to face it in a way that's going to yield or net peace instead of friction. The word was it argue or fight?
Argue.
Argue. So again, I'll go back to agree to disagree. If you stick at disagreement and you own that as a disagreement, it won't elevate to an argument, or worse, a fight, and doors being slammed and consequences being given. So yeah, you gotta look inward. I have control over me and how I respond. The things that I do, the things that I say, I have control over preventing that argument or deflecting that argument.
Okay, so now let's stick with the dating world.
Okay.
I hate fighting with my boyfriend. Is it easier to just let him have his way?
Again, that word fighting. And I hate fighting. I think everybody hates fighting. So stop it before it gets to that point. The reality is...
But if stopping it consists of compromising every single time, is it worth it?
I'll get to that. So let's go back. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Want me to start over?
Yeah, say it again.
I hate fighting with my boyfriend. Is it easier to just let him have his way?
Okay, I was going back to the fighting versus arguing versus disagreeing. The reality is it's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies. I think I talked about the 6 R's in intimacy. The first R is romance, and everything's perfect. It doesn't take long before you get to the next R, which is reality, and the next R, which is reaction, and the next R, which is resistance. Those are going to happen. What you have control over is keeping it from turning into an argument. So agreeing to disagree is really important, unless what you're disagreeing about can be a deal breaker, which leads me to the second part of that question, which was, do I just
let him have his way?
Let him have his way. Letting him have his way and compromising are two different things. So you want to talk about it. You want to find a compromise. If you let somebody have their way over and over and over again, sure, there's going to be no more arguing, but while the argument is dissipating, the resentment is elevating, and that sends a relationship to its death. So You want to figure out how to compromise. So no, you shouldn't always let him have his own way, but you should always have a conversation about why this is a disagreement that's elevating to an argument, and say, how can we each separately revisit this in a way where there's compromise? If you could think of an example, let me know, because I don't think that question had an example. You don't want to be taken advantage of. You don't want to be voiceless. It's a partnership. And so, yes, there are times, believe me, I know from being married to your father, many times where I'm like, I'm going to let him have his way on that one. I do not want to fight that battle, and it's much easier for me to sit back and let that one go. But there are many, many other times where I'll say, no, we need to talk about that, because I don't like to use the term fair, even though that's the topic of this this episode. It's unfair of you to expect X, Y, and Z of me, or to not participate in whatever it is that I'm asking for. So we need to figure out how to make this work. And when you talk about it, and you agree to disagree, because I don't know about the rest of you all, but we don't agree on a ton of stuff. We agree on the important things, but we don't agree on a lot of the little things. So it's a constant conversation of, so if we do this and that, can we make room for this? Whatever it might be, you have to compromise. But the only way to do that is to talk to each other. Do not be, the word is not coming to me, but
Passive.
Don't be passive. Don't allow yourself to be controlled. If you are the person who says, I'm just going to let him have his way, he will take that and run with it, and that will not be a healthy relationship at all.
So it might be easier in the moment, but in the long run, it'll make things a lot harder.
Yeah, especially if it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
It becomes a pattern in behavior.
So how do I stop worrying that every time we have an argument, my girlfriend or boyfriend is going to break up with me?
Yeah, when you're dating, that's a genuine concern. And I talk a lot in my class about the differences between being single and being married. And when I say single, I mean
Dating.
You are not married. You might be in a relationship for 5 years, but you're still single.
Yeah.
So
You're talking about legality, like legal
right.
single.
So in my case, as a married person, I never think about that. I never worry, oh my gosh, he's going to leave me because of this argument. Because of our foundation, we can have really healthy disagreements, and maybe even the occasional argument, knowing full well that the foundation is not being disturbed. There's moments, and I need some space. I'm going to go run my errands because we're not resolving anything. But when you're dating, such a fine line. You shouldn't be so insecure that you think that relationship's over because of that argument. You should be able to learn how to disagree in a very mature and productive way. You need to argue respectfully.
I think that if your partner doesn't validate whatever you're bringing up, that might be something to look into. And if they are validating it and you're still feeling that way, then that's a you thing.
That's a you thing. How to argue effectively. Fight fair, right? So first, no name calling. Only ever call out the behavior, not the person. Okay? It is demeaning, it's judgmental, and it's counterproductive.
And you can't take it back.
You can't take it back, yeah. No interrupting. Be a really good listener. Listen to the other person when they've got something to say, and if they interrupt, you say, hold on, please let me finish. Okay? No blaming or accusations. Really talk about you versus me, my thoughts on the subject versus your thoughts. And I would also add thoughts, not feelings. I really think it's important to try to remove your heart and your emotion from whatever the argument's about. Because yes, your heart is hurt, but let's get beyond that to what the actual issue is that needs to be addressed. No cussing. Well, you know how I feel about cussing. There should be no cussing ever. But especially when you're arguing or you're angry about something, because again, it's very demeaning, and to me, it reflects a lack of self-control. Again, that's my opinion. No yelling. Yeah, yelling is a waste of your energy. They should be right there next to you, so that you don't need to raise your voice. Please make sure you're not doing it in front of a bunch of people. Take it somewhere private. No sarcasm. That's a big one, because you're having a very serious conversation.
It's also demeaning.
Again, if someone's sarcastic, sarcasm tends to be followed by a laughter, and that really will shut the other person down. No defensiveness. I think I said that already. No sweeping generalizations. Remove the words like always and never. Just don't, because we're talking about this situation, not that it happens all the time. We're talking about right here and right now. Obviously, no physical or emotional intimidating, no violence. Remove control and abuse altogether. There's control or abuse, get out. Get out ASAP. And no walking out without naming a follow-up time, or whatever. Sorry, I don't usually do that, but I saw that this morning. Try to have some sort of resolution, even if it is to agree to disagree. I can't tell you how valuable that is. When you agree to disagree, you're showing respect for what the other person's saying. You're having a resolution without having to solve the actual issue, because maybe it can't be solved. Maybe it's something that you have to take with you into your relationship. So be able to recognize what the dispute is about. Be able to say, no matter what happens, we're okay. We're going to be okay. If we're not going to be okay, then you need to rethink that relationship. And the phrase that I use all the time is jump ship. It's never too late to jump ship, even if you're engaged, to be honest. But once you're married, that's a whole nother story. And we're going to talk about marriage and family at some point, even though most of you aren't there, but being prepared for it. When you're married, you want to fight for that relationship, so you make sure your foundation is solid. When you're dating, you do kind of have the luxury of saying, I know I've invested 4 years of my life with you, and I thought maybe I was going to marry you, but this is a deal breaker, and it keeps happening, and I reserve the right to walk away. Don't forget that. Really important.
Okay, last portion. If the arguing is constant and it's not stopping, is the relationship doomed?
Not necessarily, unless, of course, it's a dating relationship and you're exhausted. So yes, can it be doomed? I mean, that's your call. That's your call.
Yeah.
But again, if you're married, it should never be doomed. You've got to come up with new techniques, find new tools for getting through those arguments.
Let's stick with dating.
Okay.
You're dating, you're constantly arguing. How is it not doomed?
It's only not doomed. That's a really good way of putting it. It's only not doomed if you have been on the verge of investing into the future and you've made progress over whatever amount of time. Did it say always fighting?
Constant
arguing. Yeah, constant arguing is a real problem. And usually it's both people are at fault because all they're doing is feeding the beast. You have to both be willing to step back. Sometimes people need therapy because they cannot see beyond their nose to realize their part in the arguing. So if it's constant, I always tell people who are dating who constantly argue, I always say this is supposed to be the honeymoon stage. When you get married, if you're marrying this person, the obstacles are going to be so much bigger and so much more that if you can't handle the little stuff, you will never be able to handle the big stuff. So typically people who argue constantly, in my opinion, tend to be
Doomed.
Be what?
I said doomed.
Doomed. Well, I was going to say usually that means they're selfish.
Okay.
And they're not willing to compromise or meet halfway or accept either defeat or accept their own imperfections. So, yeah, you got to get to the root of why the arguing is so chronic. If you're not willing to get to unpack it and figure out what the root is, the problem is when you meet somebody else, let's say you break up, you meet somebody else, and arguing starts again. Now there's a pattern, and you have to ask yourself: is it me? Is it person? Am I constantly choosing the same type of person,
or is it who you are?
or is it who I am? Have I set my expectations too high? Am I unrealistic?
I think that's very important.
Yeah. You can't be unrealistic. We talked about this a couple episodes ago, of this idea of, is it a deal breaker or is it me? Is it me
Unrealistic
expecting too much? Yeah. So it's only doomed if neither of you is willing to recognize your part in it and willing to, I'm not asking you to change because you know how I feel about change, but I am asking that you have a new attitude or a new approach if you want to fight for the relationship. But constant arguing is a big, big red flag. And if you're in a dating relationship, you better figure it out now, because bringing that into a marriage where suddenly you're going to have children to deal with, mortgages to deal with.
The cycle really doesn't stop.
The cycle, oh no, it gets worse. It gets worse, and then there's divorce. And that's what we're trying to avoid here, people. Was that it?
That's it.
Woo. Okay, guys. You got to fight fair. How do you fight fair? Don't fight at all. Stop it before it gets to there.
Communicate before it gets to there.
Yeah, so communicate your disagreements and agree to disagree. If it pushes to an argument, argue fair. Do it respectfully. Come from a place of love. Call out the behavior, not the person. Don't try to change anybody. If it gets to fighting, to me, fighting turns into violence, and that's not allowed. We're talking about building relationships here, not beating them down. So don't get to the fight. Stick with disagreements and temper it, and be kind to one another. Thanks, Lucy.
Nice, Mom.
Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to email me. What's my email address?
justaskmrshurlbut@gmail.com.
Thank you. Comment, like, dislike. Your feedback is so important. If you could think of something else you'd like me to talk about, let's get the conversation started. See you soon.
Bye.